Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm Peter Lavelle. We're starting a new rubric here at the Gaggle. I'm calling it the theory of the case, and we have George Szamuely here. I'm going to put him on trial to give his case. We both read today a very interesting piece over at the Moon of Alabama, and it basically takes a look at the election in Bolivia, and the left won, and I'm not surprised, because the old right wing, racist right wing of Bolivia is a minority. I mean, Bolivia is a country where the majority of the population is indigenous people. Okay, and so they voted left. Okay. That doesn't mean I support leftist governments, but I do support democracy. Remember when they had all of those dictators in the 1970s, all those military dictatorships, and America said, give democracy a chance. And then they voted in all these left-wing governments, and then the U.S. decided that they have to have forced regime change from one country after another, and we had a very terrible, dirty war under the Reagan administration to get rid of them. And I've went very far afield into the crickets here. Now, what is the theory of the case? And the Moon of Alabama makes a case that Trump has a very good chance of winning. So, George, your theory of the case: Trump can win.
Yeah, I tend to think that Trump can win. I would rate his chances higher than those of Biden. I think the opinion polls are incorrect. They have a very poor track record. We're not just talking about the 2016 election. They got Brexit wrong. They got the UK election of 2017 wrong. They are clearly using flawed methodologies. We had Robert Barnes on a few days ago. I think he gave a good summary of why those methodologies are flawed. But I think in general, they are oversampling the kind of people who would be thinking negatively about Trump and expressing their intent to vote against Trump. I think that's one issue. I think another issue is that clearly the Republicans have a better ground game this time than the Democrats in general. Democrats in general have a better ground game, but this time they have a very good ground game. They're beating the Democrats in terms of new registered voters. New registered voters are always likely to be voting. I mean, they wouldn't be bothering to register if they didn't intend to vote. And the early voting is nowhere near as good for the Democrats as they had anticipated. In other words, yes, there's a lead for the Democrats in the early voting, but it's nowhere near big enough to take into account the large Republican lead in the votes on election days, because the Democrats have chosen to do early voting, to do mail-in voting, while the Republicans, who don't trust the postal service, they just think that they're going to be lost. They don't even trust the early voting. They think that their votes will just be tossed away. So I think the Republicans are much more likely to show up on election day. So I think that's being undercounted by the polls. So I think, so my theory of the case is that if you look at another issue, I think, is that the enthusiasm gap. And why that's important is people have to show up to vote. When there was Obama was on the ticket, there was enthusiasm. People showed up to vote. There's no enthusiasm for Biden. So therefore, the millennials, the kind of people who support AOC, and the kind of people who would have probably shown up for Bernie Sanders had he been on the ticket, just will not show up for Biden. I think it's like it's a cold day. Why bother stand in line for 10 hours to get to vote for Biden? So I think, whereas I think the Trump people are enthusiastic about their candidate, and they are likely to stand in line for 10 hours to get a chance to vote for Trump. So I think all of these factors would indicate to me, my theory of the case is that Trump has a good shot at winning.
Okay, well, you just gave your theory of the case. We've just finished this podcast. I'm going to put it up, and we're going to let everybody decide, and we will revisit it after the election. I will give my theory of the case soon, and it's probably not a whole lot different than yours. I just have a lot more caveats. So thank you very much, George, for doing the first theory of the case on the Gaggle. And if you like this, like, share, and subscribe.